Okay, Bob Allen. I'll introduce this guy probably half a dozen times today. Probably his introduction is not even necessary. He's going to give us a forms update. He's the founder of Robert Allen Law, one of our sponsors, one of the world's largest law firms focused on the yachting industry, based in Miami and Palm Beach, and primary drafter of the EBA purchase and sale and listing agreement, which has now become the industry standard. I was reading some notes yesterday, some folks that wrote in last night about the webinar, about the seminar today, saying how good the EBA forms are and how easy they are to use and how much they make much more sense on behalf of your client. So ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Bob Allen.
Well, a couple of things. On the program, it says I'm Drew Hill. I think Drew Hill was a wide receiver for a professional, So, for once in my life, I got to play in the NFL. Since nobody else has said it, I want to let you all know today's my birthday. And I think I paid for a big cake at halftime. But on my birthday, the last thing that I ever imagined was that I'd be talking about forms. I went to law school, and now I'm talking about forms. And it reminds me of a client that I have. He was a multi-zillionaire from Brazil, a really great guy, a builder, architect. And I was explaining something to him. And he said, in Brazil, you'd be a very, very wealthy man, because here we don't focus on the details so much. If you didn't focus on details, you'd be very wealthy. So, I'm wealthy enough to drive a Tesla, but I don't have my own private jet, and that's because I care about the details. Before we get into the details, one of the things that the IYBA is thinking about, and I've been involved in that thought process, is how do we share with the world our concern for others beyond ourselves. Now, I'm the last guy in the world to talk about what they call ESG and CRT and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm to the right of Attila the Hun. But that being said, there is this organization, it's called Mercy Ships, and they put a ship on the east coast of Africa and on the west coast of Africa, 2 ships, and they are run by volunteers who pay to be on the ships and provide medical services to people who otherwise would not have access to those medical services. I believe there's something on your chair, or your desk, or whatever the heck that is. I'm a lawyer. I only think in terms of chairs and desks on the table that talks about Mercy Ships. And I think we have a short film, is that right? I'd like to share it with you.
Countless millions have no access to safe and affordable surgery. 75% of them live near a port city. Mercy Ships uses hospital ships to bring hope and healing to some of the poorest nations on the planet. All of our crew and doctors on our hospital ships are volunteers, and our life-saving surgeries are offered free of charge.
This is Mercy Ships. We run 2 of the world's largest non-governmental hospital ships, the Global Mercy right now in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and the Africa Mercy on its way to Madagascar.
We provide free life-saving surgeries to those in desperate need. But that's not all. When we sail away, we leave behind increased healthcare capacity by training professionals, building infrastructures, and supporting the development of national strategies.
7 years ago, we started a very special initiative with the shipping and trading community called Cargo Day. We've raised $7 million in 7 years with over 100 companies, and we have a special gala every year to celebrate the companies who have donated the most. This initiative would not have been a success without the key partnership of a few people. Hear what they say.
Cargo Day, a unique event where the shipping and trading community come together for a common goal, raising funds for Mercy Ships.
The shipping community can impact lives in Africa. Join us in changing these lives.
The success of this initiative is giving us confidence that we can create a new, unique movement within the yacht industry to save more lives. Will you join us in this exciting new initiative?
We need you. Please join with us.
Anyway, we're just starting, a group of us, to talk about this. Obviously, it's all voluntary. And you'll be hearing more about it from me and hopefully from the IYBA itself. Now, before we get into the forms, Bob Saxon introduced me as the primary author or drafter of these agreements. And in a sense, it's true, because I don't know if John Burkhard's in the room, but John Burkhard hired me and paid me to develop agreements that were post-Florida Yacht Brokers Association standard agreements. And so Allied Marine adopted those. It was the first adopter of these new forms. But it wasn't until two other folks got involved, Paul Flannery, who drove the process, and Rob Moss, who knew more about yacht law than anybody in the world. And so even though I was the original scrivener, I just want to be clear that the association itself drove this, invested a lot in it, and we couldn't have done it without, in particular, Rob, and later on with other members of his team and members of my team as well. So thank you, Rob, and Paul, thank you for having the vision, and the rest of the board for trying to develop roadmaps that avoid lawsuits. Now, there's a couple of litigating lawyers in the firm, particularly from my office, but we do everything we can to avoid litigation, and having a good roadmap to get you from here to Chicago without getting lost is how we start. So now there's just a few small updates that we've made to the purchase and sale agreement. I think they're subject to Rob Moss's final approval, but maybe he'll blink. And I'll start with a click. Oh man, this is absolutely impossible. Nobody's going to see this. Here. I need technical support. All right, so this is just serve as a reminder to me of what the heck we did. Since I'm a nutcase, we took out a couple of commas, which is very important. They changed the meaning. I'm kidding. We clarified in paragraph 3 that a buyer doesn't have to do a survey. We already knew that they didn't have to do a survey, but we just made it a little bit clear. And the main change here is that upon completion of the survey and trial run, the owner will not make any use of the vessel. Now, we already knew that that's the case, but we've said it explicitly that it's not just after the survey, but after the sea trial, or the trial run as we call it. The seller's not supposed to make any more use of the vessel except moving it to the delivery location. All right, in paragraph 4, how many people have had closings where everybody was waiting on the money? You were in the middle of the deal and you were waiting on the money. We had a deal once, it was last year, where we were waiting on the money for 6 weeks. It was a closing supposedly off the coast of France. The boat had come from Italy, but everything was done. Even these guys, without our involvement, had signed the protocol of delivery and acceptance. So theoretically, this deal was done, but the money didn't show up. And so what we've done is we've tried to change the standard so that the money is in place. It's in place. We're not waiting on the buyer to send the money. In that particular transaction, the money went from the buyer to the seller. It went from the Bahamas to an account in Italy, it was supposed to. And the broker, I'm not sure if he's here, but he loves us now. The broker for the seller listed the seller's address in Russia as opposed to their address in Italy. And I don't know, maybe the wire would have got intercepted anyway because the last guy's name ended with off or something, you know, Antonov or something. It wasn't that. But what we've done is we've changed the language so that the funds are either paid in advance, paid, literally paid, to the seller, or they are parked in an escrow account so that the moment there's a protocol of delivery and acceptance, ownership of the funds transfers. That's the idea. So that any delay in payment later is post-closing because the payment has actually been effected into the account of the broker or the lawyer. So I'm not 100% sure that this is going to work perfectly, but it should avoid the problems of waiting on the money because the money will already be there. Another thing I want to say is when we change the forms, it's after a lot of discussion, but it doesn't mean that they're not changeable back or that we have achieved perfection. So this is an attempt to get us closer to getting a deal. And as a broker told me, who's no longer with us because he's gone to meet the maker, he said, Bob, a deal isn't done until the broker gets paid. And by parking the funds with the lawyer or the broker and saying the deal is done once these things happen, you know what's going to happen? The broker's going to get paid. Now, if OFAC or some, German EU authority says, oh, we got to look into these people, hey, that's later, right? But our job is to get the broker paid. Now, if we represent a buyer or we represent a seller, and they got lawyers, we can argue about the details, right? And then nothing here can't be changed. Everything can be changed. We got that special conditions clause, and everybody in the world uses addendums and conditional acceptances. But with this, we get the broker paid. All right, we added a little clause here at the end of 6 because I don't know how many of you all deal with Mexican boats that are in Mexico, but we deal with them plenty, so we impose the burden on the seller of getting rid of the temporary importation permit into Mexico before sale. And we put in a clause here that was understood at law that if a date was on a weekend, it went to the next business day. But, lawyers argue about a lot of stupid stuff. My kid might be in the room, so I don't want to use a bad word. But lawyers make a lot of money, especially lawyers who aren't in the yacht business that get hired to do yacht deals. And so we got rid of that. So I'll say, are there any questions right now on the purchase and sale agreement? John Burkhardt over there.
Hey, Bob, good morning. Yes, would you just touch on how we made the last change, the amendment? A conditional acceptance will be treated as an amendment to the contract. I'm sure there are people in the room that didn't hear that last time, plus I'm getting questions on it still. about that, and it's not super clear to a lot of people, and I think it's probably the most important thing that we've done to that agreement in quite a while. So, thanks.
All right. The exact language is an acceptance subject to any condition will be deemed a proposal to amend this purchase and sale agreement and will not preclude the buyer from accepting the vessel unconditionally on or before the accept reject date. So we dealt with a lot of situations where somebody gave a conditional acceptance. And traditionally in law, if you make an offer to somebody and a person changes one thing on the there's a little bit of language confusion, but let me straighten it out. If I make an offer to buy Rob Moss's house and I say, I'll give you $10 million. Have you seen his house? I haven't, so this is bullshit. Excuse my language. But if I said, I'll give you $10 million for his house, for your house, and he says, okay, Bob, but I want $10,001,001. And he signs a little piece of paper and he sends it back to me and he said, it's a deal at $10,000,001. Is there a deal? There's no deal. His purported making a deal with me is a rejection of my offer. I'm a buyer, he's a seller, he's rejected my offer. But in boats, it's a little weird because what happens is I sign an offer to buy Rob's boat. Have you seen it? It's like $20 million. No, I haven't seen it either. I make an offer to buy his boat. And I get a right to look at his boat and to drive his boat. And then 20 million seems a little bit much to me. So I say, look, you need to wash the windows and scrub the floor. So I'm only going to give you 19 million. Here's a conditional acceptance. I accept it. Either you wash the windows and clean the floor, or I give you 19 million. Historically, we have dealt with that. I think most lawyers and most people, I'm not sure, but the way I've dealt with it historically is that's a rejection. That cancels the offer in the first place. But the more we looked at it, we might have been wrong, or the law might have evolved, and it seemed to make sense not to consider it a rejection or a termination of the deal, but rather it's more like a dance. It's like a dance. Like, do you want to take this? I've offered you 20 million for that boat, Rob, but now I only want to give you 19. Is that good enough? And he may say, well, that's not good enough. And so I don't lose the ability to buy the boat because I said, I only want to give you 19 million or I want you to wash the windows. He says, no, I don't do that. I have the option to continue to proceed without clean windows and without a clean floor, or to give them the originally contracted for amount. Does that explain it, John, sufficiently?
So we have the clarity now about what's supposed to happen with the boat after the sea trial. It's essentially supposed to stay where it is. What is the proper protocol in the event that the boat does need to be moved, i.e. a hurricane, dockage rate change, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, everybody knows Rob Moss is smarter than me. What do you think, Rob? There is no protocol, actually. I don't think so. Maybe there's... Yeah.
Written notifications with signatures?
Yeah.
No, what I said is I think when you have that language in the contract, you would have to amend the contract. And if it was a hurricane or something, maybe there's an argument that it's a force majeure type situation. But if it's like you said, say a dockage rate change, I don't think the seller can say, I'm not going to pay it, I'm moving the boat.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's absolutely no argument that a dockage rate change would allow you to move the boat. You can't make that. I mean, you can make it be laughed out of court. Now, if a hurricane is coming, there is then then this is what I tell everybody, and brokers sometimes don't want to listen to me because, you know, lawyers screw up deals, right?
No more statements of the obvious, please.
Well, here's another statement of the obvious. Hire a lawyer. Before you sign a contract to buy something really expensive, hire a lawyer. And maybe they'll think about that. But the reality is, you know, you have to think about that or you're going to have to renegotiate it. And you'll be in violation. What will the consequence of the violation be? I think the consequence of the violation is that you're in breach of contract. And what are your damages? I don't know. Does it give you an absolute out to walk away because somebody moved it? You know, next thing you know, you're in a lawsuit.
So I guess the answer is to have you guys create an amendment to the contract or involve you guys in it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, a contract. You know, to get to Chicago, you can get a map from AAA, and if you follow it, you'll get there. Now, the map can get into the detail. Let's say there's a rest stop, you know, at exit 57 on the, you know, whatever turnpike. And if you go in there, there's a McDonald's and there's a, you know, a Dunkin' Donuts. Now, you can't stop at the Dunkin' Donuts or you can go to the McDonald's. Or, you know, those shakes are pretty good over there at, you know, KFC. We can do a million things. And if the consensus among the brokerage community is that we should deal with that issue and it should be in the form, then I think when the brokerage community brings forth a business issue that your board of directors thinks needs to be addressed, we deal with it. And otherwise it has to be dealt with in, you know, individual negotiations between parties. And I think it may be worth it. I mean, we live in an area that's afflicted by storms, right? And there's probably an out under the force majeure clause that would allow the movement of the boat. But how much detail do we get into? I don't know. That's not really a lawyer argument. That's a discussion among you and your colleagues to see what do we want in there? Do we need more? Because, you know, we can fit more in there. The margins can be opened, and I can get rid of some more useless words. No smaller font. No smaller font. We deliberately make this the size font that people don't read, but they're not insulted by. Right? I bet everybody in the room has got a form sometime from something, you know, had a warranty on it, and the print was in there, and you say, God damn, I got to read this stuff? Who reads that stuff? Nobody reads the stuff that's software. We know that already. Not a single person in this room other than me has read the software license, and the only reason I read it is because I wrote it. But, so anyway, no smaller print. But we can, you know, in these spaces at the end, we squeeze things out. Even on this one, all this Robert Allen stuff on the right, that's where I was getting rid of the commas and the useless words. So we can fit stuff in. So get together with the guys and the gals and give us some more ideas because, you know, that's lawyers make money the more time they spend on stuff. So put us to work. All right, let's go to the listing agreement.
Hang on one second, Bob. I got another question from John.
No, I just wanted to say one thing. I wanted to give a gigantic thanks to Bob and Rob. These guys do this pro bono for our business. They put a lot of time into it. They're so free with this. You can call them 2 seconds. They'll answer this stuff. They put their heart and soul into it, and they do it for all of us. And I just, you know, they need to hear from us. Big round of applause.
Hey, John, I just want to be clear. Every time you call me, I charge Allied. So,
As long as you don't charge us.
all right, here's our listing agreement. Let's see what we did on this thing. I don't think we did much. There's nothing of substance there. Okay, here's what we did. We changed, Yeah, there's different versions of this form, and nobody is obligated to use the current version, but it just makes sense because it represents the collective wisdom of the experienced broker community and the lawyers that deal with this stuff more than other people. So what happens when a listing agreement terminates? And historically, if you show a boat to somebody and they don't buy it and they come back a few months later and they buy it, you're entitled to a commission. The question is, for how long? And without checking with me, somebody changed that to a short period of time. I have to tell you, somebody changed it without checking with me from 1 year, which we put it back to some other figure. And I don't know what happened exactly. Maybe I was on vacation, or maybe I was taking hallucinogenic mushrooms, which I've never done, but any period of time less than a year, I think is nuts. And so you show a boat to someone, they come back later with another broker, who gets the commission? It's a tricky question. Well, the brokerage community has decided that if you showed it to somebody and they come back within a year, you get the commission. But there is a condition to that. And if you're running your affairs properly, you have a list of everybody you showed the boat to. And so the paragraph 10 here says, if I sell my boat to Bob Saxon, and it was showed to me by Trevor, it's showed to him by Trevor, Trevor gets paid. But after the listing expires, somebody goes to John Burkhardt. Trevor gets paid as long as within 10 days of the listing expiring, a list is produced that has the names of the persons to whom the brokerage or any co-brokerage physically showed the vessel during the term. It has to be, let's read the clause. Owner shall pay the commission to brokerage if within 1 year after termination of this agreement, owner charters, donates, or whatever, or otherwise transfers or conveys the vessel to any party to whom the brokerage or anybody who was co-brokering physically showed the vessel during the term. Brokerage shall provide within 10 business days of the expiration or termination of the agreement a complete list of persons to whom the vessel was physically shown to the term, failing which the brokerage shall be deemed to have waived a claim to the commission on the sale of vessel to any person who should have been listed. Okay, so you've got the listing, it expires, you got 10 days to put together a list, and you got to send that list to the owner, and if you know who the new broker is, send it to the new broker, but you got to send it to the owner. And that way you're protected. And if you don't put that name on there, you're toast. And we had a case just recently where they were toast, and they said, well, we should have got paid. And they should have got paid. But they didn't put the name on the list. Yes, Paul.
Bob, I just want to make one comment, and unfortunately we are a little short on time here, but there was a question that was sent in. We had asked for a survey from the attendees if you had any questions. And it was a really good point that was brought up. We speak to physically shown as being your procuring cause. And the question was, well, the person suggested that that should be removed from the contract because what if the boat's on the other side of the world? Would it be considered physically shown if you contracted or engaged someone else on your behalf?
Yeah, they'd be your agent, so they'd be standing in your place.
It doesn't have to be the broker, him or herself, that physically shows the vessel, as long as it was physically shown on behalf of that broker.
That's correct.
To the client.
That's correct.
Okay.
Under the law of agency, that person is your agent, that person is you.
Okay, excellent. We have the next panel coming up in a minute. If you have some stuff you want to wrap up, that'd be awesome.
I think that's really it. There's probably more people that need to be thanked. There's other people that have served on the committee. George Jousma, who's not here, has been on that committee. Who else has been on the committee? I know David Moss has been on the committee. He rewrote he created the new IYBA charter agreement, and his opinion has been valuable on these forms as well. Christopher Anderson of my firm has been very involved, occasionally Umberto Bonavita as well. So I think there are probably a couple of other brokers, but they all deserve your appreciation.
The thing I want to mention is that during the breaks, many of the attorneys will still be here through the rest of the day. They're very approachable, very easy to ask questions to, and they'll even give you answers without charging you. So it's a perfect opportunity to get some good legal advice. Bob, thank you very much for all you've done and for the presentation.